Welcome to With Him podcast. This is Raz. I'm glad you guys are here with us. We are so excited today. I am Raz. This is my co-host, Dr. J, and we are going to be having amazing and fun conversations, very unique to this podcast, and we're very excited about it. We have got a world-class chef in here today and restaurateur, David Falk, and he has 3 restaurants here in Cincy. I don't even know about other things he's got going. We're going to find out today with you guys. But Nada, Boca, and Soto, and also then a home deal called Domo, bringing some amazing food to your home. So, but I'm telling you, this is an awesome opportunity for Dr. J and I because this is awesome because we've got a guy in here that's super sweet, and he loves the Lord as well. And that's what we're excited about. We're going to hear what's happening with him. And
it's so great because the whole idea of this podcast is just having conversations with people, interviewing people, and trying to have this conversation of what does it look like to live your life, whatever you're putting your hand to, whether you're a chef or a stay-at-home mom or a homeschooler or an entrepreneur or a teacher. How do you do what you're doing with Jesus rather than for Jesus? Mm-hmm. And that we're learning that we actually can partner with the Lord in the things that we're putting our hands to. And David, dude, just hanging out with you, getting to talk with you has been so much fun. So I was excited to record one of those conversations with you.
Yeah.
And just talk a little bit. So welcome to the podcast, man. We're really, really glad that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So talk to us a little bit about, what's the God story for David?
Yeah, so, I was raised Catholic. So always, from an early age, always believed in God. Mm-hmm. But I always kind of love the, Brennan Manning.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. I quote things. I get them usually about 70% right. So I'm by no means a scholar, but I think I have it roughly like the Brennan Manning was a Catholic priest and then became kind of a Protestant, leader or whatever, author. And I love his description of, in Catholicism, they really get, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, but I think it was like Yahweh Kabod or something, like the glory of God, that you could hold a dime up in the sky and you knew it blocked out 10 million stars, right?
Right.
And so, I grew up with that kind of that God was this, otherworldly, obviously unbelievably powerful, but he also was kind of like my uncle in Wisconsin that I spoke to 3 times a year. You know what I mean? It was so,
Yep.
And so, and then, through, lots of events when I was 25. I mean, I was already a chef, and I was the most arrogant. Everything you can imagine a young chef being arrogant, cocky. And obviously it was tied to a lot of just deep rooted insecurities and whatnot. And I kind of was dating this girl and followed her into Crossroads Church here in Cincinnati. And I started going there to impress her. And, and my mom famously said, she's going to rip your heart out and you'll come back to the one true church.
She said.
Okay. Well, she was half right. She did rip my heart out, but it was good. And, Lord's got a funny way of getting people there. But I was just there and I was I just kept listening and started reading the Bible. And, I always looked at the Bible as kind of, in my mind, it was always Shakespearean or something. Mm-hmm, and I started reading it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I can read this. I can actually understand it. And I just remember, this kind of pivotal point in reading the Bible, where I was like, wow, human nature hasn't changed at all in 2,000 years. At all. I think people today still have this mindset of we're so much more advanced than those Philistines in the 1800s or whatever. And you realize, and quite frankly, I think in a lot of ways it's the exact opposite. But I was just like, wow, we're dealing with the same crap, And I think my issue was dishes would so that was one part. The other part was I was very talented. And even at the height of my arrogance, I knew it didn't come from me. So a dish would pop in my head and I would do it and then people were blown away. But I like I said, at the height of my arrogance, I knew where did that dish come from? That didn't come I didn't decide today I'm going to create the signature dish of Boca. It just happened.
Yeah.
And then, around, and again, this is a long time ago. So this is I was 25. I remember I was driving on a road and a car was coming at me and the headlights were coming at me. And it's the first time I feel like I ever heard the Lord's voice. Was like this thought just came into my head, which was, if that car hit you and you died and you met your maker, how would you feel?
Ooh.
And I was petrified. Like I was like, whoa, because I knew I had been given so much,
Yeah.
and I was just using it basically. I was definitely the younger son of the prodigal, the prodigal son, right? So I was using it for wine, women, and song, and to whatever, and for my own glory, and so yeah, that started the journey, and it was it's still a long journey. But it was the best way to describe it is almost like, like somebody coming off of a drug, right? I thought it was going to be this instantaneous, like, here I am, like Paul to Saul kind of deal.
Yeah.
But it was, a long, long journey because, I am born and bred in, one of the most challenging, most unhealthy industries that there are.
Right.
And so there was just a lot of pruning that came out, and that initial excitement, but then it's like, oh, this is hard,
Yeah.
but that was, but everything I've ever done in my life is hard. So I think, it was just par for the course.
So
That's kind
you
of it in a
said
nutshell.
something really interesting. You described like an idea would come into your mind
Yeah.
for a dish.
Yeah.
But you instinctively, or you didn't use that word, but you had this thought that didn't just come from me.
Right.
I'm curious as to why you thought that. Because there's a lot of brilliant people all around the world that have inspiration, they have a eureka moment, something comes into their brain like that, but they would attribute it to their own brilliance or something else. But talk a little bit about, how did you know that? Or was it just an intuitive thought?
It was just kind of common sense. Like everything else I do, like I set out to do it. So I am going to go to the gym to work out, right? I go to the gym and I work out, right? Like I kind of, now maybe the thought to work out, maybe that came from, somewhere else, but a dish, it's actually, I'm like kind of getting back in the kitchen at Boca more, which is a lot of fun because I like, that's maybe we'll talk about it a little later, but it's almost like full circle where I'm like, this is a gifting I have. We're doing this thing called cadenza, where I kind of take one of the floors of Boca and I turn it into, like, I just throw down whatever. And this one, and I'm sure this podcast will probably come after the cadenza, so this is not and we're sold out. But my point is, like, I'm not trying to push it. I'm just saying this last cadenza, like, it was like you kind of get into the flow and these things were popping. But now I just understand, like, it's, that's not of me. My talent is not of me. I didn't wake up and say, well, okay, so the other part, I forgot to leave this out, or I left this part out, which is kind of critical, is when I was growing up, my dad, German, Norwegian, my mom, Italian, grew up around food. I was the pickiest eater. I would only eat hot dogs and mac and cheese. So the great irony, it's almost like David being picked, right? You know what I mean? Like, wait, you want the runt, the youngest one, I mean, there's plenty of stories in the Bible where, it's somebody unsuspecting. Like, I really was a picky eater. And I started, I was a horrible student, followed my brothers. I was a freshman in high school, followed my brothers to work at El Coyote in Anderson, which at the time was like one of the hottest restaurants in Cincinnati. I walked in day one and I'm so ADD. I was like, dude, this is awesome. Right. And I was like, I'm never leaving. But I was pouring coffee over an elderly woman and our whole family, her handshake. And I was petrified I was going to burn her. And I was like, that's it. I was like, I'm not getting out of the restaurant business. I'm going in the kitchen. Now, this is back. Like, I love telling my cooks this because, honestly, we're raising a generation of wussies in a lot of ways. And I'm like, they think it's like, oh, I got to work 50 hours. And I mean, I went back. I was working. I was at school full time, had a full time job, working in this kitchen with ex-cons, doing drugs, doing all. I mean, it was like something. It would have been a great reality show.
Right.
But I'm this 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid walking in there looking at me like, yeah. But I just fell in love with food. First sauce I learned how to make was Béarnaise sauce, still my favorite sauce. And so there was kind of this conversion to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So it was just, I always felt like this is odd. Of all the brothers, my other brothers, it would have made much more sense for them to be chefs. They would eat anchovies and sardines out of the can with my dad, and I was like, that's disgusting. I still think it's disgusting. Now I guess I realized I had a far more sophisticated palate.
That's
now
what it was. You were more
I like anchovies from Spain that are, like Ortiz anchovies that are crazy expensive. But yeah, so I think it was just that. Like, I just knew it wasn't for me. I'm like, where did I, like, I just, and again, I was super arrogant. I would never tell anybody that, but and again, I think you could say that it was one of the first times, maybe the Lord was like kind of prompting me and just like, hey, there's another, power source at play here, and it ain't you. So that was kind of a wake up call. Now I think again that was very early on, and it's just like everything. I think anybody's story, right? It gets more deep and more fruitful over time, and just being it's kind of very kind of, you're on spiritual milk at first, right? And then it starts like, okay, here's a steak.
Yeah.
Like with that comes, a lot more difficulty, a lot more challenge, but. So that was the first, kind of aha of like, oh, and again, I always believed in God. It was just this whole notion of like Jesus. That was a new thing to me, because that, you don't get a lot of, you talk about Jesus kind of in the Catholic faith, but it's more kind of God. And, and again, it's kind of that uncle in Wisconsin that you, talk to a couple times a year.
Yeah.
On the I do want to get to Jesus. We love him.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple of questions. So you kind of walked into that, and it's like maybe like some kid walking onto a football field in Texas, but like you walked into that and you're like, it's something like you're like, this is really awesome.
Oh yeah.
When you're 14.
No, I literally was like, I'm never leaving this industry, like ever, and I never
That's
did.
amazing.
I was very blessed. I knew at 16. So I started at 15. By 16, I was like, I'm never leaving this industry.
Wow.
And I went in the kitchen, and one of the servers had a sister who was going to school at the CIA, the top culinary school in the world. And I remember I was going to a high school party at Joe Ragland's house, and it was like a big deal. And
shout out to Joe.
And you're 14?
And I was probably 16 at the time. And the server's like, hey, my sister is going to be in town. Do you want to meet with her? And I was like, oh, man, but there's this party, and I really want to go to this party. And I was like, I got like 10 minutes. Right. I'll meet with her for 10 minutes, right? She, okay, so, and it was, Friday night or whatever. We sat down at this booth at El Coyote, and it was supposed to be for 10 minutes. It was 3 hours later. And just the electricity of, I was like, duh. And, wow. So even cool. That, right? And then I knew at 16, 17, I was like, I'm going to go to the top culinary school. I'm going to work for one of the top Italian chefs, one of the top French chefs, one of the top American chefs in the U.S. Wow. And then I'm going to work in Italy. And I knew it, cool. And then I just kind of went. So again, like, how do you explain that, right? I feel like now I'm constantly like, what's my next step? Like sitting with the Lord, like, what's the next thing that we're gonna do? And it has never been that clear. But again, I think he's more, because I was on kind of spiritual milk at that point. Yeah. I was like, here, I got to really spell it out for you because you're not that bright. Okay, like hopefully you're a little, now we can challenge you a little bit more. Yeah. But yeah, I just went bam, 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 bam. And so, yeah, and even then, like, I knew I was very blessed at 16, 17 to know exactly what my path was going to be, and just like, pop, 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 pop.
How do you end up going to those places? Like, do you get accepted into those places? You're like, how's that?
Schools?
Yeah. How's that work?
That is a great story. So so another part of the backstory is like, I grew up out in the country. My dad and my mom fought to, were we going to go to public school, private school? My dad was like public school from Wisconsin, and my mom was raised by Catholic nuns, and she's like Catholic school and, private school. And my dad won it first. And then when I was like in 5th or 6th grade, my mom overheard my oldest brother competing with his best friend to see who could get the worst grades, and she freaked out, leveraged everything. And we were the rich kids, legitimately, because like we lived in a home, not in a trailer, like out. This is early '80s, out near Richmond, and so we were like quote unquote the rich kids. And my mom leveraged everything and sent us to Summit Country Day in Hyde Park, and like all of a sudden we were the Po kids, and it was like, oh, it was like whoa. And so so I'm going to Summit, and like, at 15, 16, I immediately knew I was going to go in the restaurant business. So I was like, what do I need chemistry and physics for? Right. I was like, and honestly, I made it out of Summit by the skin of my teeth. And the only reason I made it out of there without getting tossed out was because the headmaster at the time, like, I would participate in class. But I never did homework because I was like, I'm going to be a chef. Right. Right. And so, Mr. Terrell rather like saved my tuchus. And so I didn't have great grades, to say the least. And so I go and I apply to CIA, and I'm like, my entire, at that point,
and CIA stands for
Culinary Institute of America.
Okay.
And Hyde
You're
Park,
not a
New York.
secret agent.
No. But, that I can tell.
Sorry.
I can't disclose everything.
Cut
Okay.
the cameras.
You have to blur all of this out.
Exactly. But long story short, so I call up. I'm like, and they're like, yeah, we're not sure you're going to be accepted. And I'm like, what? they're like, yeah, your GPA's too low. And I was in the kitchen with my mom. I'll never forget it. And I'm like on the phone, when it's still connected to the wall back in that day. And I'm like, I go, Mom, they don't think I'm going to get in. My GPA is too low. And my mom, I tell this story to this day. Like, so all of you who love my restaurants, you owe it to Marcia Falk on many levels. She just looked at me immediately and she says, tell them we'll be there tomorrow. I said, we'll be up there tomorrow. And he's like, the guy on the phone was like, tomorrow? Where are you? Cincinnati, Ohio. We'll be there tomorrow. Well, we can meet you at noon. Okay, noon tomorrow.
Whoa.
Hung up the phone. Mom's like, pack your bags. We're leaving in 30 minutes. We packed our bags, jumped in the car, and we drove straight to Hyde Park, New York.
Okay.
And I am like sitting there, and I am like, I got my suit on. I've been practicing how I'm going to sell them. Like, there's no way I'm not getting into this culinary school.
Right.
This is like my whole thing since I was like 16. I knew exactly And I sit there, and I'm sweating. I'm walking into the admissions office, and I sit down. The guy just looks at me, starts laughing at me. And I'm like, not the response I thought I was going to get. I'm like, oh, he's like, dude, bro, you're in. I'm like, huh? He goes, anybody that's going to jump in their car, drive all the way up here overnight,
Man,
you're
on.
in. So,
All right, there's one for our young
that's
people
how-
out there. Go get it. Go
oh,
get it.
100%.
It's like,
I mean,
go
that's
get
been my whole career. I mean, like,
That is good,
every
man.
job that I had after that moment, I tell kids this all the time.
Yeah.
Every job I had, I went in, I worked for free. And I said, actually, even before that, I worked for free. I'd tell a chef, like, hey, can I come hang out? Because I knew I didn't have any experience. I say, hey, can I come work for you for a week for free? And they're like, sure, free labor, go ahead, And so you work for free. And at the end, I'm like, hey, man, if you're ever looking for anybody, I'd love to get a job. And like, I never didn't get the job. Every single job, Chow Baby in Harper's Point, Spiaggia in Chicago, came back to Masonette with Jean Robert, Charlie Trotter's in Chicago, like every single one. Blah, 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 blah. And then in the midst of that, went and worked in Italy for free too. So a lot of working for free. Wow. So when people cry about, hours and all that, I'm like, cry me a
Pay
river.
your dues. I mean, we talk about that in music all the time. I mean, you got to pay your dues.
And that's
what do you want?
I mean, I could go on a whole rant here, but that's a problem is that, we're creating people who don't want to go through the crucible. I love this, and maybe, I don't know, people can hate this. I don't care. I think it's, well, at least in my industry, I can't speak to any other industry, but I saw this tweet and I memorized it. And it says, if you want work-life balance in your 20s, you're guaranteed to be mediocre.
Wow.
And it's like, I'm like, and that's fine. If you want to, like, you just want to, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, when you're 20-year-olds talking about work-life balance, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
No, you need to be getting your butt kicked right now. This is when you do it. And it's like, that's fine. If you just want to kind of cruise through life, whatever. But and that's one of the things, like, honestly, I really struggle with, like, with faith and everything else is like, what did I say? It's like, yeah, I want to be God honoring. Like, how are you God honoring and not suck at the same time? Right.
Yep.
Like, I just see a lot of Christian organizations like, oh, we just, it's like I said earlier before we started the podcast. It's like, if it was a Christian, NFL team, like, we're going to have a Christian NFL team. And it's like, great. So, like, you don't convert on the third down. That's all right. We'll give you grace.
We're going to serve you.
We're going to serve you. We'll give you grace if you don't, convert the third down, and it's okay.
Right.
It'd be amazing, right? It'd be an amazing, probably amazing team, but you're going to suck.
We need to forgive 7 times 7.
Right. No, and it's like, and so to me, I think it's something that I'm constantly wrestling with is like the hard work that it takes to be exceptional and doing it in a way that isn't performance based and is God honoring and but like I want to run, like I have a passion to run world class restaurants and I believe that is absolutely from God. Like I think but I don't feel like I fall neatly into a, kind of Christian business owner because I honestly, a lot of times when I hear people talk, I kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies because I'm just like, and I also don't think that I think that sometimes, and this is just my take, I think that Christians feel like that, like they're going to get the entire kingdom and they're going to do everything that's ever put on the table. It's like, no. Like, and I think you referenced this, the book from Timothy Keller, Every Good Endeavor. It's like, no, like, a trash collector being an amazing trash collector honors God.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think that us providing, for me, I could just speak to like providing a healthy work environment. Like when I came up, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, it was right up there with music, whatever. And you would have, and it was totally common to see people, obviously drug use, and then preying on, on younger employees and just, in all the things in an unhealthy way, sexually, everything, it was just a very, very unhealthy work environment. And I remember one of my old COO was like, the dream I have, and this is way before I had kids. He had a daughter at the time. He's like, I want to have an organization where I'd be proud to let my daughter work there.
Ooh,
And I remember that shocked me.
that's
That's a
good.
shout out to my boy John O'Freeze.
Oh, that's good.
But and I remember exactly where I was when he told me that. And it's really, I haven't really thought about it in a long time, but I'm like proud of it, because I would have no problem having, and actually my oldest daughter sometimes works at Boca, but I would have no problem. I mean, it shows, and that it's maybe a great way to illustrate what I feel like I'm called to is back then that was revolutionary what he said.
Really?
Oh, even in my own organization, it was still revolutionary.
So Gordon Ramsay sort of screaming, abusive sort of.
I still love that. That's fine. No, I don't mind. No. Maybe not abusive, but the screaming, yelling, getting a little fired up. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it's more just really, I mean, just whether it's drug use, whether it's, you'd have guys that, it was their goal to try to sleep through the whole staff and whatnot. And it was like applauded or condoned or whatever. I mean, just, you allowed a lot of really unhealthy behavior to go on. And so to me, it was like, whoa. And that was, I don't know how many years ago Jono said that, but I just remember, whoa. And now I'm proud to say, I'm not saying that our the organization is perfect, but what I can say is from the leadership, we do not condone or allow
that's good.
that behavior. And so to me, that's a win. We talk about building the kingdom, that's a win.
Yeah.
And I also think people being able to come in and have an exceptional meal and be blown away, that's a win. We kind of get it in these Christianese terms where it's like, oh, how many people came to Jesus because of your business? And I'm like, that's not the scorecard I have. Now, if great, and that's where I'm kind of hands off, and I just want to be, I want to have world-class restaurants. I want a place where people can come. And I do feel like I always say, for me, it was like being bit by a vampire. At 15, I was like, I'm not leaving this business. This is the industry. There's no question. For me, I know that I feel I was called by God to be in this industry. I think I have the vast majority of my staff are called to be in this industry, whether they believe it's from God or not. And I don't put that on them or whatever, but they will absolutely tell you oh yeah, this is industry. So to me, to be able to provide a healthy place where that could happen, but where we're also striving for greatness, I think that's the thing that it's that both and, right? It's the kind of invitation challenge piece, right? Yeah, invitational. Yes, you want to be a good boss. You want to care for people. But then you also want to challenge them to get better. So that's kind of my passion. And it's I always feel like, gosh, should there be more? Should we be, curing poverty in the inner city? And every time, and when I was younger, I thought that way. But it takes everything I have just to run a great organization. Yeah. And at the same time, I'm married with 4 kids, and to be a great husband and father, right? That's all I got, you know what I mean? And it's not to say, I could get called to do whatever, and sure, but I think that just to do those 2 things, first and foremost, my family, and then to run a world-class organization that honors people. But that doesn't mean, I told you, I was on a call right before I got on this podcast, all fired up about a personnel decision, and I'm not going to lie, I'm like, I candidly can't wait to get that person out of my organization because, I just don't deal with people disrespecting us and other people. And so, yes, that means, we're not going to give you grace if you constantly don't convert on 3rd down, right?
Totally.
You can go do whatever somewhere else, but here we got to get first downs. Yeah. And I have no problem saying that. We got to get first downs. We got to blow the guests away, right? Our food has to be spot on. Our, your uniform has to be right. You have to show up to work on time. You have to work, and so, and yeah, that's,
2 things real quick. I just want to affirm what you said. I heard you say that I want to create a space where people are experiencing a world-class meal. And I just want to say, we came to you actually invited us to come, Jess and I, for our anniversary. And I don't say this lightly. It's interesting, I felt so loved just eating at your place. There's something about when someone is wanting to bring the kingdom of God, it's not necessarily standing on a box and talking about Jesus.
Right.
There's a sense of the presence of God comes into a space, even to a beautiful meal, and the presence of God is there. So I just want to affirm you. I experienced that. I experienced the kingdom of God eating some of the best food that I'd ever had. It was delicious. But second thing that I want to say, what I love about this conversation is this has been a really sort of like a conversation of tensions because you've been describing the sovereignty of God. I mean that he from the get-go you knew this and it felt like that was from the Lord and these things have happened. And it's like the sovereignty of God that he's really, really good in your life and you work really, really hard.
Yeah.
And those tensions, I'd love for you to just talk about that a little bit because sometimes in the Christian space we joke about like remember when Christian movies, you would just be like, oh man.
So bad.
I just wonder about this tension between, yes, the Lord is in charge. Yes, the Lord is leading and guiding me. Also, I'm going to work with all of my might as unto the Lord and not for men. Talk a little bit about that tension and that paradox between he's in charge and I'm working really hard.
Yeah. I think it's I think it was easy for me, like the working hard was, I guess if I were going to put that, like the working hard aspect was really easy, right? If you're any good in this business, like you kind of come up and you work hard. I think it's sitting here saying like, okay, but what's the purpose of that, right? I think it's converting it into saying, okay, he is sovereign. Like this is, I feel that, and again, just my story, right? Like I didn't like food, and then all of a sudden, like, from Saul to Paul, I'm like, it was like everything, the talent that I had that was inexplicable, and all of that, like, okay, I do have a purpose here. And honestly, I mean, I feel like so much of it is, I'm going to work hard anyway, because that's just how I work. That's how I've always worked. But doing it for a purpose that's greater than myself. And again, I always, I'm not going to name any names, but there's an employee in particular, a team member who's been with me a long time. And I don't think that this person's necessarily a believer. I don't know where he is spiritually, and definitely would consider. Let's put it this way: he would definitely, I guarantee, feel like he is on the out. If you put him around Christians, he would feel like he doesn't belong. He would feel instant judgment, right, from Christians. And I've never had this conversation with him, but like we know each other well enough, and I think, and I see his like. He genuinely loves me. Like he'll come up and just give me bear hugs, and he knows because I just genuinely love him, and I don't put any requirements on him.
Yeah.
I don't I think that's the difference now is like I'm sitting here. I take a very kind of St. Francis of Assisi approach of his line that said, go out and preach the gospel, and when you absolutely have to, use words, right? Like I just try to love on my team. Now, that means I hold them accountable and everything else. But I really want, my goal is first that they feel loved because I think we are a magnet for people who have been accused, cast out, from whatever their thing is. And that's why it gives me, it makes me really, even doing this podcast a little bit, because it's important that I want to make sure that my staff always knows I love them wherever they are. Like this is not like, I don't look at when I'm thinking about promoting them. I'm like, well, so how are you? Did you go to church on Sunday?
Right.
I think that
how's that Bible memorization going?
Right. So I think it's just them. I think, and it's beautiful because I think you see that a lot of people who are, would be considered, like I said, kind of, kicked out, at least in their minds, don't fit in or aren't welcome around Christians, that when they get to operate with me, they just see like, I just love you, dude. Yeah. Like wherever you are, like there's not this litmus test on like, oh, you got to do this, and then I'm going to like you, or you're going to be, whatever. And it is really, really sweet. I mean, it's sweet to see that. And it's almost this, and again, I kind of go back to St. Francis of Assisi. Like, to me, it feels like the gospel, and I'm not using any words. I'm just loving on these, on these staff members. And I think that kind of shocks people because they're waiting for, because I think, especially the guys that have been around a long time, I don't go around my organization with a cross on my chest and and whatever. like I said, I try to love on them, and I try to, kind of lead through actions. And then, and again, if, the Spirit moves in a way, and it's not that hasn't happened over times where we'll go deeper, maybe somebody's, there's a lot of examples. Generally, when when crap hits the fan in somebody's life, that's generally when that door. But I'm not pushing it on them. It's just not. Because I think that for whatever reason, like I said, our industry is kind of a magnet for the lost and and those who have been persecuted, and and just all kinds of rejection and everything else. And then you have somebody, a big personality like me, that my hope is that they actually they get to experience a grace and a like and then whatever whatever the Lord does with
while
them.
you've been talking, I feel like the Lord just keeps reminding me over and over and over. I just see him sitting down eating with tax collectors and sinners.
Yeah.
And, the churchy people
Yeah.
in Jesus' day were looking at him like, why are you eating with these people? Why would you hang out with them? Like your literal industry and Jesus' ministry model, well, there's a lot of eating with people that
and drinking. And water and wine, baby.
That aren't, quote unquote, the in crowd. And yet, it's so interesting. It's almost like that's an image of Jesus. There's an image of Jesus in your ministry and your work.
Well, and again, this isn't just. I mean, I haven't really thought about it, but I would much rather hang out with like broken people who like don't know the Lord at all, don't have any faith, like whatever. I'd much rather than the really religious people that I can't stand them. And that's where I can't. Like I have such a visceral reaction. And it's not to say that. No, but I just do because and I think you could, like, for me, I see their hurt. I see, like, what they're not saying. Sometimes they say it to me, but I can see, and you just see it where everybody's cast them out. Everybody, and it's almost like, and I think the one person in particular, and absolutely not going to name a name, but has kind of gone through the circle with me because been with me long enough that where there was probably a point where it's like, oh, he's going to judge me. He's going to judge me. Yeah. He's not judging me. Yeah. He's loving me. And and I'm like, yeah, bro, I'm never going to judge you. Like that's not how I operate. And who knows over the arc of the next 20 years or whatever, who knows where the Lord takes whatever. Yeah. But I really, and I've had peace about it because there have been times where I'm like, man, I need to do more. Right. Like I, and it's like, no, I legitimately think them just, knowing that I am a Christian and but I love them and that I don't, they're not rejected by me. They're not persecuted by me. They're not judged by me. I hold them to the same standard that I hold anybody else to, but like, yeah, I mean, and I can only say like in 2025 at this point, that's where I feel, and that's where I feel like kind of the Lord has placed me is, and I remember, I'll tell you it's funny you were saying standing up on a, we've all seen the guy.
Yeah.
And even I have grace. I even have grace for those dudes because like I think they're doing the best they can. Yeah. And so we had it was Cinco de Mayo, which is this big party out in the front of Nada. It was like crazy. And I was actually eating down at Soto and this and my head valet comes down and he's the guy that I prayed with and has had stuff go on. And so he's someone that I, share my faith with whatnot. And so this was, after that he comes down, he says, hey boss, you got to come upstairs. We got a problem. And I'm like eating at Soto. I'm like, what's the problem? And it was these guys, with bullhorns, repent, you're going to burn in hell. Wow. And it was kind of like, it felt like just like the kind of Holy Spirit came in. And it was just like, and I just walked up to the guy. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? I said, hey, slow your roll, man. Like, just, like, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. Right. No, you're not. And I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, do any of these people know they were? Just so happened that my GM was walking by and I'm like, Chris Smith, do you know I'm a Christian? He's like, yep. Do you see that in me? He's like, every day, or something like that, and that was it. And I said, hey man, you got to understand something. I said, see all these people enjoying Cinco de Mayo? Those are the lost sheep, right? And you just sitting here like pounding them like, I have a calling to like serve these people, but that's the vision I feel like God gave me is like this isn't how you serve them, is screaming at them. And the guy just kind of looked at me and he looked at his crew and he goes, round it up, we're out of here. And he just got up and he left. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
That does
Yeah.
sound like a Holy Spirit moment.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was totally. I mean, it was pretty surreal. But I was just like, hey, man. And I did it in a way that wasn't. I didn't go after him.
Yeah.
I just was like, hey, this is like all those people you see, like
Right.
they need to be loved, and it,
Yeah.
and you, like you screaming at them isn't going to like somehow get them,
Yeah.
you know, to a better place or to to the Lord. Like it was this very like.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a very powerful moment where I just kind of felt like the hand of God being like, I got this situation, and both for not judging him.
Yeah.
I didn't say, listen here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so that's just, so I feel like I'm in a very peculiar space. Like it's a
are.
very, I think it's easier. I don't know. I don't want to say it's easier, but I'm just that's what I said, like Daniel, like I am so in the world, like deep in the cellar of the world, right?
Mhm.
Or in the sewer rather, and cellar of the world. But I love being there because that the people you meet there, they're just not I think it's just such a great opportunity, like I said, to love on them in a way that you're not applying all this pressure, and they can kind of come to things on their own and just feel like, the example of the other one is, so I could go all day on this, is the Good Samaritan,
Yeah.
right? I use that example all the time, right? So the Good Samaritan didn't walk up, and if I'm getting my theology right, I think some religious people came first and like walked past him. Right. So the Good Samaritan walks up and says, man, you just need somebody to love on you. Like you're beat up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And takes him and gets him, taken care of, puts him in an inn. Wasn't like, and by the way, you need to know Jesus and like this and da 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 da. No, it's just like, just loved him.
Yep.
That was it. I think. I don't know that there was
No, it's true.
I don't think there was another story that came after that. And then he came and said, well, now you owe me, buddy.
Right.
So I think, so to me, and again, I want to be very clear. I'm not against, evangelism or anything like that. But I think it needs. There was a guy, Mike Breen, who I heard speak once, and he said, it needs to be led by the Spirit. It needs to be organic and something healthy, not something forced that you're battering somebody over the head. And I continue to find, and I feel like it's more my calling is I just want to be the person that comes around and loves on. And if I'm honest, I love my guests. I do love my guests, but it's my staff.
Yeah.
Like those are the ones that I stress out the most. And I think that's probably true of any business owner, but I do it from a perspective of it's not just like how are we going to be great in our organization from a worldly perspective or from a being world class, but it's also like how do we love on these people? How do we kind of and that means sometimes you have to fire people but you realize like it's as long as you're going about it the right way, because for whatever reason, I think it's the thing that isn't talked about enough is like, I personally believe God does want world-class organizations.
Yeah.
He wants accountability. Yeah. He wants people to work hard. He wants you to sweat. And so to me, it's a bizarre, I don't hear a lot of, I feel like I don't hear a lot of, and maybe there are, I'm just saying, I don't hear a lot of messages that kind of like, that kind of bring the fire of like, no, don't suck at what you do.
Right.
Like there's nowhere in the Bible that says like, yeah, you just go along and it's fine to just kind of be average and just suck and just kind of phone it in. Ugh. I just don't,
Well, Joseph was so good at what he does as a civil servant. He becomes the vice president of Egypt.
Yeah.
That's no joke. I mean,
Yeah.
there's and the word says the Lord was with him.
Yeah.
And allowed everything that he put his hand to succeed. But there's also just general skill set that the Lord gives people. That's a world-class leader who's being used by the Lord.
Oh yeah. Like I don't know anything about Jeff Bezos,
right?
But that dude's got some serious knowledge and skill, right? You know what I mean? And you can point out a bunch, and that have those skills, whether they know the Lord or not. But I think for those of us who do and that are called, it's like, okay, what does that look like? Yeah. But I do, yeah. I mean, you said it, Christian movies or Christian, what, I don't know. That's my question for you guys. What is it about, why is it that the vast majority, I think it's changing, but the vast majority, I think I told the story earlier. I don't think it was on the podcast, but I had this woman come up and say, I want to talk to you about starting a Christian. Did I say that on the podcast?
Nope. Go for it.
So this woman sits me down and says, I just thought, I'm doing this thing with Christian, businesses, and I thought I'd ask you, like advice on opening up a Christian. Now I tend to be a tad bit provocative, So, but it's kind of like this when somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting the restaurant business." You know what my response is? Hell no.
Don't do it.
No, and here's why.
Don't do it.
It's not because I don't like the restaurant
Right.
business. If you're thinking about it,
Right.
it ain't
Not
for
doing it.
you.
Right.
You're either like, I'm in. This
Yeah.
is what I'm doing.
Mm.
So help me understand the best way through. No, you don't understand. Like, I'm getting, like, those people, I'm like, yeah. There's a great Andrew Kahn, who's this kid. He's like, he'll be the next great chef in Cincinnati. He's like 16. He's like, I'm like, come on, kid, come in. Like, I'm like, yeah, all day long, because I can see it in your eyes. You've been bit by the vampire, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, she said, like, I just, it was like all sweet. And I was in a mood. And forgive me, Lord, because I did curse. But I said, well, first thing I can tell you is if you're going to have a business, if you want to have a Christian business, first thing is it's got to be a great effing business. Except
Yeah.
And I did it on purpose to kind of shock her. Like, are you willing to be great? Like, or is it going to be, oh, you can't, and, like, oh, well, we got to, we can't fire anybody because that would be mean,
Right.
and it's like, well, that's fine, but you're not going to be a great organization.
Mhm.
And I think that there's plenty of organizations where you can be great and thrive and be challenged. Like, I just don't think that you can't be both.
Yeah.
That's my experience. But
You
anyway,
have
why do
to
you,
choose.
why do you
I was
think?
going to ask the artist here.
Yeah.
And really, it's
that's-
funny because being a chef and it's kind of like being an artist. They're very similar things
No
here.
doubt.
So we got a
Not kind
musician.
of, it's 100%.
We got a musician and we got a chef.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
Maybe
question.
a little bit. Talk a little bit about that. What are you?
Yeah,
some
because
thoughts on
I've
that?
been having fun thinking about that. Is that and we've talked about Bellozel. How do you say his name?
Bezalel.
Bezalel. I can never. I always throw the L before the C. Bezalel. But yeah, I mean that you can tell, or for the most part, it looks like he's the first guy really filled with the Holy Spirit. and-
The word says that God filled him.
Filled him for
Craftsmanship.
creativity,
Yeah.
craftsmanship, and
Yeah.
all kinds of craftsmanship. And so when I'm thinking about chefing, musician, artist, dancing, it's all in that creative realm. It's a reflection of God's creation. It's a reflection of His creativity, and one of the things I think about that, because again, I look at it from a musician standpoint, and I've been in all kinds of places in the world. I think people think I've only been at church, but I haven't. And but I think about it, it's because it's something that Satan wants to take, because it reflects God. So when you're talking about doing something amazing, where when you lay it down and people come out and you said it, I feel loved. This is the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a connection to God. I really do, and I can see why, and I see the same thing in music, why the demonic realm wants to grab hold of that, because all of those types of areas. Because if you look at, it's actually very similar types of people. When you talk about broken people, all the kinds of people are very similar in music, very similar in dance, very similar in show, and all of that, which I think is really interesting and intriguing when you bring it in an amazing way, and then with the Holy Spirit, they feel that. I've had a couple of different places where a friend of mine, a guy had a band named, gosh, I can't think of the name of his band right now. Anyway, a friend of mine who was in secular music, really good at it, really great songwriter, signed by Hollywood Records. And in fact, he called me one day and was like, hey man, Hollywood wants to sign me. Should I do it? Because he was already making it. He kind of had started at the first end of where social media was starting to really take off. And he was doing pretty well, and he was selling a lot of songs on TV and things like that. And so he was struggling with that. But I really felt like from the Lord, I was like, yeah, I think you really should do this, because, I don't know, because he loved Jesus. He was a strong follower of the Lord, but his music was just his music, and what it was. And he said, I knew when I was playing, like if an A&R person, artist and repertoire, meaning the people who sit in the bar look at you playing and go, hey, we want to sign you to Hollywood Records. He said, I knew sometimes when people would write in and say, hey, I was thinking of committing suicide and I heard this song, which was super depressing. But he said, I knew the Holy Spirit was on me and was on that. And he's never really done any song that mentions God or anything about it. But I think it's a reflection that people are experiencing the Holy Spirit. I think they're experiencing the Holy Spirit that's what they're experiencing with Joseph. That's what they're experiencing with David. That's what they're experiencing through your food, which is an amazing thing. And I do think, especially when we look at that first filling of the Holy Spirit, it does have to be at the highest, very, very highest quality. A person who's, a lot of people don't know is a believer. I've talked about him before because I was friends with him when I was young, is Alton Brown. And one of the things that caused him to go into this sort of TV industry that he went into was he and his wife would watch really bad. Like, you remember the old They used to do Saturday Night sketches of that one lady,
Julia Childs.
Julia Childs.
Amazing.
Julia Childs. You know, and all this,
Of her.
yeah, right.
yeah.
But they would watch
Cutting her
these-
hand and stuff.
Okay. That was funny. But save the liver. But anyway, look back on that. Anyway, you can find it. So what was interesting is he and his wife would be watching these different shows, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so boring. This is so boring." And she finally got tired of him saying that so much that she's like, "Well, can you do better?" And he actually had gone to had worked in film and media and stuff through college. He said, "Yeah, I think I could," and then he kind of started out into all of those, interesting shows and, all that kind of stuff. But I think that there is a level where honestly, it's definitely not a beautiful reflection of the Creator and the Father if it's not quality. Yeah. If it's not your best, and not everybody can't be the best. I can't. Yeah. I'm not gonna, play, whatever, guitar like, whoever. I mean, not everybody can be the best, but bringing the very best that you have into it.
Do you think it's also, I mean, this is my own, I think that I think that's absolutely true. And kind of like, as another part of it is just one, you get attacked for sure. And I hadn't thought about that because you're right. There's an absolute correlation in every seriously creative industry, right? But I also feel like there's a, kind of a, I don't know what I would call it, a temptation for kind of believers to just hang out with other believers, and then they just kind of get soft, right? Like they don't know how to engage in the world. They don't know how to like get in and do the thing that other people are doing because it's like, well, we'll do it over here. There's just kind of a, I don't know, like a softness that comes like, and I don't know what that is, but it's like you kind of got to get out and get punched in the face a little bit so that you know what it's like to be in the ring, because I think you can get insulated in this, and it's like, oh, okay, well, whatever, and I think that because I don't know if you just take just from a secular perspective, right, to be world class at anything means you got to get in the arena and get punched in the face. Yeah, I don't know anybody that, right? And it's like, and so you're kind of like, do I really want to get in the ring and get, because I feel I'm at peace with who I am, and I'm just and I don't know. I think that's also part of it is I don't know. It's always like this is a weird one, right? And I do not know. Right? I do not know. Like this is, but what I do like about this is like I said, I always strive to be the least religious Christian ever, right? Like I really like, whatever. I just it partly because my industry, but I also honestly I can relate to my staff in so many ways, But like this is one where I think that I had a buddy of mine who once said, "We're all going to have the conversation." And I'm like, what conversation is that? It's like when we die and we're sitting with the Lord, and he's like, "Oh, buddy, yeah, you know how you thought this? It was really this, right? You know what I mean? Like, we all think we have it figured out, right? But we're constantly on this quest, like, oh, right? Don't you feel like if you just even went 10 years ago, and if you think 10 years in the future, like, I have a better understanding, I feel like, of what God's heart is in insert any circumstance, certainly in marriage. Love you, babe. Anyway, but like this is one, I have this insane passion and I think gifting. No, I know I have an insane passion and gifting for food wine pairings. Okay, and yet wine and again, I'm not a absolutely no alcohol kind of whatever, but like alcohol definitely is for me personally, like I have to be careful. Like I really like it can become a problem, and whatever. But I'm just like, Lord, like I'm like, why do I have? Like I really have to wrestle with that. Like it would be so much easier if I didn't have this gift, right? Because then I would just like, I'm not going to drink, right? You know what I mean? Like, oh, and then you just take it completely off the table. But like I have this, and it's a passionate gift, and it's just like. And it just challenges, I feel like, the notion of who he is. Like, and it also feels, that's another example of, I had an old mentor who said, oftentimes, as a Christian, life is like a wild stallion, right? And like some people, they're like, whoa, that stallion's wild. So they pull out a gun, they shoot it in the head, and they're like, I'm not dealing with that. Yeah. The other one jumps on, just smacks it in the butt, and just goes, rah, and that's not good. It's like the art is like getting on and learning how to control it, right? And like you don't. And so, but it's like those are the weird things. Like I love caviar. I mean, I love caviar.
From a can. That's what I was hearing earlier.
Well, caviar does come from a can, so yeah. So you're not wrong, but there's a varying degree. No, but I love caviar. I love the finer thing. Like I do. Now I'm also a hillbilly. I love Miller Lite. That's the only thing I drink. I drink world-class wine.
So you're telling wait. So our pairing is Miller Lite and caviar?
No, Miller Lite is the perfect. It needs nothing else. Okay. But like I love caviar and filet of fish from McDonald's with equal passion.
Oh my gosh.
Let me just, as a disclaimer to all you folks out there, legitimately, filet of fish from McDonald's when it's right, like when the bun is like gooey, sticks to the top of your mouth. Oh, too much tartar sauce, so it drips down your arm. You lovers of it know what I'm talking about. I legitimately love it with the same passion as caviar, but I do love caviar. And so I'm always like, it's just a weird thing to love because you can get into this mindset as, a Christian or whatever, as like, oh, well, you should just, you shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. It's like, I always feel like I'm just in this quagmire constantly in this just really fascinating, weird space. And it doesn't lessen my faith at all. I am constantly, I try every morning to have coffee and just sit and be like, all right, boss. Like, I oftentimes, and I haven't said this to too many people, not for any other reason, I forget, but like a lot of times when I pray, it's kind of funny. I just intuitively will call God chef.
Yeah.
I do because I'm like, I grew up and you're like, yes, chef. But I do have this like, okay. And I do have that's cool. What do we do here? Like, should we do this? Should we do that project? And so.
Oh, that's really good. I love that. Well, man, I bless you with that too, because again, the host of the party said, hey, this is the finest wine.
Yeah.
It's coming out right. The first
beer. I think about that all the time.
Absolutely.
I want to taste the wine that Jesus turned
exactly.
water wine. I'm like,
what would you pair it with?
Exactly.
I don't know. You gotta
taste it. You gotta taste it. Well, and
I'm thinking it's Grand Cru Burgundy.
Hey, yeah. And also, hey, what are we heading toward too? Don't forget. Like, what is the main thing we're heading to? The feast. Yeah. It's a wedding feast that we're heading to with our bride. Yeah. And we are the bride and with our groom. And so it's like, come on, it's like this again, this creativity and sense of taste and smell and amazing food. Oh my goodness! So bless you, man. I mean, you're right on the God train. Like you're more religious than both of us, maybe.
No,
more spiritual, we'll say. Actually, let me tell you this. This was one of my favorite stories. A friend of mine, now a good friend of both of ours, but at the time I was trying to learn how to fly fish in Montana, and so I'm with this fly fishing guide, and we're driving out in his truck, and so I just kind of started a spiritual conversation with him. I said, so what's your God story, man? I mean, everybody believes in God or doesn't or whatever. What's your thoughts about it? And he kind of goes, well, I don't know. I do believe in God and kind of went to church, Christmas, Easter, blah, blah, blah. And he said, but the thing is, I really don't like religion, man. I just, the whole religious thing and kind of religion. He kept saying, I don't like religion. I'm like, oh, man. I go, that's awesome. Yeah, Jesus didn't like religion at all either. Yeah, he hated it.
Yeah.
In fact, it got him killed, and that tweaked that guy's brain for about 2 months until we ended up talking later about it. But people think that like you're describing and like the sort of the church lady, whatever. And it's like that's not Jesus. That was the religious people. Religion is what got Jesus killed.
100%. Well, there's and it's I believe in half of the statement that I think Gandhi said, but it communicates like I think a lot of like what I always think about my staff, right? Like how do they look at it? And I've been doing this. I mean, it's literally the only job I've ever had. And I think Gandhi said this. And I agree with some of it, and I'll kind of break it down. But he said, have you ever heard this line where he says, I love your Jesus, I hate your Christians?
Yeah.
And it's like I don't hate Christians, but I can understand the sentiment of like when you think about and when you read the teachings of Jesus, right? Like, yes, you could see somebody like Gandhi saying like that dude, right? Even like Elon Musk, who I don't think considers himself to be, I don't know where he is, but he's like, I think he's an atheist technically, but he's like, yeah, but that Jesus, like it's hard to argue with, his point, and I think that's kind of my thing is that, getting that religious and it's pervasive, right? I mean, people, it's like, I hate this. I have a very sensitive nose, right? Probably not shocking because you've got a good palate. Generally, I have a sensitive nose. I really, and sorry for those of you who wear it, but like patchouli or whatever, like, man, if I smell it, I mean, I can smell it like a mile away, right?
Right.
And I feel like that's like that's kind of like religion, right? I mean, people just smell that.
Mhm.
And so that's why I always feel like for me, I really have to be like so counter to that, which is what Jesus probably
Right.
did, right? When he's like, "Oh, I'll have dinner with you."
Right.
Like, yeah, let's sit down and we'll have wine and whatever. They're like, "What?"
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Little disciples. I mean,
Right.
yeah, you know, and
ridiculous.
and so yeah, and it's weird. Like I do feel this, and then religion can come in and be like, "Oh, but you're not a good enough Christian because
Right.
you're, you know, whatever." And it's like, no, I just want to love on these guys,
Mhm.
and which just basically means providing them a great
Mhm.
place to work with a boss that cares about
Mhm.
them,
Yeah.
that's not trying to take
Mhm.
advantage of them, that's
Mhm.
not, you know, and creating a work environment
Mhm.
where yeah, it's not always great. Let
Yeah.
me tell you, there are still plenty of times where it's not great, and I'm not a perfect boss, and I fall short and everything else. But the overarching, you know, I had a parents of a staff member came in and ate not that long ago, and I just remember um, they looked at me and they're like, "Just so you know, our daughter really loves working here. Says that like every day she
Mm.
comes to work, she's never felt like it's work." And I was just like, those little things are like
Mhm.
in my industry, like it's just
Yeah.
it's you
Mhm.
know it's those things do you know so yeah.
I love
It's
it.
good, man.
Love it.
So do I. I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
I want to ask you this
Hmm.
because you are you're also a business owner.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we got the whole chef thing. We
Yep.
also have business ownership, and I want to talk about leadership of all of that stuff, and maybe even hear some of your stories about making some decisions, making acquisitions with the Lord,
Yeah.
not acquiring certain things with the Lord. I want to ask you about that. Let's talk about that. So here's what I'm curious about. I'm curious about how you make decisions for your business with the Lord. Because I imagine there's a lot of different opportunities. You could make this decision, you could make that decision, you could like this dish or not this dish. There's a lot of hiring, firing. You already talked about, hey, there may be some people on your team that might be, by the time this airs, no longer on your team.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about making decisions with the Lord. How do you perceive of that? How do you process hearing from the Lord and following Him in this business?
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like the more I go down that road, and I think this is just true of spiritual growth, right? I feel like you and it's we think about it education, right? Like you always graduate to the next level and it gets harder,
Yeah.
right? I think that the thought is like, oh, this should be just like we're talking right now, and like, oh, you know,
Right.
you know, and I think that you know, to me, it was the conversion of realizing like, oh, my gut is telling me this, like, oh, what is my gut, right? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people use it,
Yeah.
and so to me, you know, a lot of it is making really bad decisions and then processing it. But you know, the most important spiritual moment of my entire life was you know, a buddy of mine who you guys know, Steve Emmanuel, who years and years and years ago taught me like, oh yeah, no, you can hear the Lord's voice. I'm like, huh?
Hmm.
Like what? And it was just like, yeah, no, like when you have a prompting or whatever. And so that attempt to listen, and I think secular folks would just say my gut tells me
Yeah.
this, or I
Mhm.
feel this or whatever. Well, you know, I think the three of us would stand in unison like we believe that's the Lord, right?
Mhm.
But I'll even say with my team like, hey, you know, my spidey senses or my gut, like, you know what I
Yep.
mean, just to say, and they've all kind of, you know, you know, if nothing else, I think trust it. And what I'll also look back is like, when didn't I follow that?
Mm.
And try to like I oftentimes teach people this. We had a guy come and say, "Hey man, I need to make business decisions and yeah, I want to hear from the Lord like blah blah blah." And I was like, "Well, let me ask you." He's like, "But I don't think I do." And I'm like, "Well, let me ask you a question. Do you know what conviction feels like?" Well, yeah. Well, I'm like, "Well, then you hear from the Lord." You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
was like just
That's pretty
saying
good.
this notion. I think for people, they can be like, "No, I don't." So a lot of times, you know, but I try, and it's really hard. Like this is one of the big challenges I have right now, just in trying to sit with the Lord and like process these things, is like my favorite time to do that, like most people, is in the morning
Hmm.
before the sun comes up.
Hmm.
but I'm in the restaurant business. You know what I
Right,
mean? And
right.
it's like I always say, like I'm living on 2 different time zones, both with my kids, and so it's always a struggle. But I do. I mean, best way to say is that I try to submit every. I don't try. I submit. I could genuinely say I submit everything, and I just kind of sit and wait on it. And right now, if I'm being honest, I'm kind of in a period where it feels a little bit like in the desert, right? Like where I have these amazing. We have some really amazing opportunities, and my guys are looking at me like, "Boss, what are we gonna do?" I got one guy like, "Come on, by," and I'm like, hold. It's kind of like
Yep.
Braveheart, when
Yep.
the horse is like,
Hold.
hold. Because I know what it's like to, to go ahead of time or not, not with him. And so I thought that like early on, it was like, oh, you just be like, go right, and I go right, and everything's great, and then go left, and so it really is that patience of waiting. Like right now, but like I'll just give you real time information.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I feel like. I feel like he's telling me. This was a couple weeks ago, right before kind of the tariffs and everything was a part of the conversation. And I just looked at I was working really hard, and but like I was like I like to believe I always work hard, but there was a sense of urgency to how I was working that literally that mirrored the sense of urgency I had during COVID, and I was just like. And I just remember sitting. I was like, I feel like in the next 6 months, some crap's gonna hit the fan. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I just feel like it's gonna like. I just can't really point to anything, but I just felt like he was like, get ready, like get ready, start running now. And the metaphor I used during COVID with my team was, hey guys, and this is like right when it happened. We didn't know how long it was going to be, but I was like, look guys, we're on a sinking ship. We need to run faster than everybody to get to the lifeboats. We're going to get the lifeboats in the water. We're going to row faster than everybody. And we're going to get to dry land before everybody else. And if we do that, we're going to win and there'll be money there. I believe that to be true. And we launched Domo and whatnot. More importantly, we're able to keep, especially in Cincinnati, like keep our entire team together, right? And I just felt that, I felt like I was just kind of operating with this. And it was like, whoa. And then boom, it was like, and it was like everything. And, and so to me, it's just right now it is, I really feel like whether, I don't know technically if we're in a recession, certainly in the restaurant industry, or I can at least say for us, we're in a recession. We feel it like we're, feeling that. So it's like, and that's just the focus. And I do think that what I typically do, cause I'm a big, like, okay, Lord, tell me everything I need to do over the next 5 years. Like, can you just write it down? And then
the plan, the whole plan.
The plan, and then like honestly, because what do I want to do? Is like I want to turn it off. I just want to get after it. I don't want to have to keep stopping and be like, which is why he's not going to just
right.
like,
Agree with you,
right, exactly. And so, but I do find that when I'm in those moments where I wouldn't say desert because I'm not like I don't hear anything. It's just like somebody said this once, like go back to the last crossroads that you were at where you heard his voice, and it's like, oh, like we know what we need to do right now. We need to do like what are the things that we absolutely know, and it's just like kind of sitting on that. Now I'm a pioneer. I like doing new stuff. Right. I got a guy on my team who's like here to build new things, and he keeps like, hey boss, we're gonna build. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, and I want to give him like we're doing this. But I'm also smart enough in that it's not like there's not work that's done in the waiting. Like we're getting new data points, we're getting new information, we're looking at opportunities. It could be on a staffing level, it could be things that we're seeing. And the world is, I mean, the world is changing in my industry. It's a totally different industry. So oh boy, I'll get in all kinds of trouble for this, but I don't care.
All right, you heard it here first. Let's go.
But like, and these are the things like in the waiting where I'm processing, but I genuinely feel like and I know this for a fact, certainly with our industry. Boy, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I don't care. I'm kind of, like I said, I've kind of turned into Ricky Gervais. You ever see him on Golden Globes? He's like, I don't care anymore, and he just starts. And I kind of don't care anymore. Because I just don't care what other people
comes with
think.
age,
And
too.
people can be like, oh, well, whatever, dude. It's my take. You don't have to agree with it. But I believe that our industry has gotten dumber, And as a byproduct of that, and not just because of our industry, but like the consumer has gotten dumber. And that, and one of the ways I point to, and it's all, and I'm sure there's other factors, but social media, I think has been, I don't think there's too many people that are going to be like, social media has made society such a greater society.
Right.
We are so much smarter. Children are learning at a higher rate. All these metrics because of social media. Truly, thank goodness Facebook was invented, right? And again, I'm not a total like social media is horrendous, but I'm just saying I can pinpoint, and there are other podcasts and guys in my industry who pinpointed this, where it's like what happened is in my day, if you want to see world class food, right, you had one of two options. That was it. You either ate at the restaurant or you worked there. That was it, right? You weren't scrolling or whatever. Even cookbooks weren't that popular, not in pictures or whatever. There were cookbooks, but nowadays a cook will see more food. Literally, one of my cooks will see more food in a week visually than I would see in 2 years.
Right.
Because like they're just scrolling.
Right.
And what it's done is it's triggered the mind to be like, they know how to visually make food look pretty, but they don't know. The problem is they don't know how to make food taste great.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were never brought up. And then the other thing is because the instant gratification, the dopamine, I got to move on. Like people won't stay anywhere.
Yeah.
So they're working for 6 months. There's no mentorship anymore. Like mentorship's gone. And I'm sure this is true in lots of other industries. And so the downstream impact of that is this is the first time in my career that I have been, gun shy? Is it gun shy? Yeah, gun shy. To like really push the envelope with food. With a new concept. I'm like, because like in the 90s, celebrities went to the greatest restaurants. And these were chefs that did their crafts for decades in France and all of that. And I worked at Charlie Trotter in Chicago. And yeah, I think it was my friend's wedding or something. The opening scene is Julia Roberts, at Charlie Trotter's, and he's there. And it was like, and you would hear about the celebrities eating at these Now, the most famous restaurant in New York is a restaurant called The Corner Store that is like bar food, and that's where Taylor Swift and nobody can get in. And I'm like, it's like, to me, and nothing against, T Swift and those guys, but I'm like, this is now what people are holding up. Like it would be like unthinkable, 30 years ago or 20 years ago that would be right. Like where did that chef, like, and it's Food and Wine or whatever, had a chef that was like renamed Restaurant of the Year or something like that. It was like I read up on her and it was like, oh yeah, she was known for throwing pop-up meals at her apartment. And then she worked somewhere for 6 months, and then like it's just like, what is going on? The reason that's my rant as an old man.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
But the other part though is like that's what in the waiting, I'm sitting back and observing. Like, okay, Lord, like what do you like? Whoa. And it's not to say. We're still like this cadenza we're doing. We are pushing hard on this food, and you can still do it. But it's like I need to sit there and say, like, I always tell my team, I was like, you need to focus on what happens inside these four walls. Every once in a while, I'm like a paradox. I like look up and see what's going on, right? And I'm not looking for the tumbleweeds that are kind of going this way. I'm looking for the tectonic shifts or the tectonic plates that are shifting and aren't coming back. Yeah. So there's a lot of that, just you taking it in and processing it and praying on it. Like, what does that mean? Like, should we not do this? Should we do this? And I think you kind of have to get, at least for me, comfortable in that tension of like, it was actually easier when I was younger because I didn't, I didn't do that. I was just like, we're just going to do this. And I feel like he had a lot of favor and mercy on me because I was like, but as I get older, and I feel like that now it's like, no, you don't get to operate like that where you just, ready, shoot, aim. Yep. And so I think that's the thing is, it's just constantly sitting and really, and then taking on wise counsel, right? There's plenty of things in Proverbs and, taking on wise counsel and be like, I got a couple guys that I just go to. I'm like, dude, this is what I'm thinking. And we had an opportunity, in Nashville to do a restaurant with literally one of the biggest stars in the world. And it was like, and again, it was just an opportunity that we could go down. It wasn't like the paper was in front of me and the pen was hovering over and I said, no, but it was like, no, hey, this is a real opportunity. And my team was fired up. Everybody, this was a big deal, like a big deal. And I just like went down, took a buddy of mine who's a believer. We like prayed over the space and it was just like, no, don't do it. And there were a lot of reasons. One, I mean, as great as it sounds to potentially do something with celebrities, I'm like, yeah, I don't know that world.
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm not impressed by it. Like, I'm smart enough to know the value of it, but like I'm not. I don't know. Like it scared me as much as it did get me all excited. Where when I was younger, I'd be like, yup.
Yeah.
I started a business for the sole purpose of making money. Didn't work out, right? Lost a lot of money on it. And it's like, that's another thing is like, yeah, when I do things I'm not passionate about, and when I do things where the driving motivating factor is just to make money, like it doesn't work. Like I feel like, and again, I feel like the Lord's been like very clear, like I've given you this kind of skill. Yeah. Now I will say this. I said this to somebody the other day. I'm going to give you two things, and both of them are very hard to do. Okay, I don't want to apply either of them are easy, and they're not. If you just want to have a restaurant and make really great food, just be a great restaurant from a food service or whatever, like that's hard. Okay, but that if you just want to do that's hard. Yeah. And then if you want to have restaurants that just make money, that's hard. Okay.
Right.
That's right. If you just want to make money, that's hard.
Right.
What's really hard?
Right.
Trying to do both.
Yeah.
That is the grand poobah of them all. And that's where I'm at, is that I want to have world-class organizations, and and I do want them to make money because it's a lot of work. And it's a very, very hard industry to try to, and so to me, the older I've gotten, and also understanding I am older, right? I don't want to be the blockbuster, right?
Yeah,
You know what
totally.
I mean? And so I think it's constantly, so that's, so I try to sit in the morning and just be like, okay. And right now I'm just in a season where I'm like, I will say this. Either the canvases or the stages that we can create our next masterpiece. And that's a blessing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, and my guys know, like I mispronounce them as like Sudoku, the game,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? Like it's literally a term in my organization. Like we're figuring out what goes where, but they all intersect with each other. So we're like, oh, if we do this restaurant there, then that's going to impact this restaurant over here. So it's exciting, but I could tell my guys, they're like, let's go, chef. Let's go. What are we doing? And I'm like, hold. It's like Braveheart.
Yeah.
And that is the difference, is now I'm like, and I don't know when it'll be, and I don't think he's ever going to just be like, here it is, you're going to do this. Because I try. And that's the thing too, is like a lot of my buddies who are really brilliant business people, they're like, this is my 3-year plan, and I would love to get to a 3-year plan, but I can't bring it's just like it just feels like, what is, and it was one of the leadership principles I felt like he gave me during COVID, is like, it was all crazy, and it was just like, actually I feel like that's probably him right now. I'm like, oh yeah. Real time, folks, here we go, is like, just take the next right step. There's like something in Frozen, one of the Frozen, I got daughters, they love Frozen. I forget what it was, like, just take the next right, or something. I was like, that's where I get my business epiphanies from, Frozen. But it was like, but it's true. It's like, just take the next. What is the next right step that we can all agree on? And right now I have a vision cast later this afternoon, like preparing, my team, like, hey, I believe we're headed into a recession. As I said to them, there are people who disagree long term, like what tariffs and all of this are going to do long term. They disagree whether it's going to be good or bad. Okay, but they all agree in the short term it's going to suck, right? So it's like, guys, get prepared. It's going to suck. And if it doesn't, and I'm wrong, great.
Totally.
Right, but we're going to be in shape ready. Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers it, but it's just like sitting in that in the morning, just being like, okay, Dad, like, what are we doing? Right? Like, Lord, what, like, but I will say this, though, just as to add on to that, is that I do find that a lot of times there's kind of this like, hey, I'm going to have coffee in the morning and I'm going to pray. And then I go into my work day and it's like, you never think about him again. Mm-hmm. I find it more, and almost like, I feel like I get more promptings as I'm just like, sometimes it's just like, get up and go, start moving and listen, and it's like this, you're like, oh. And then maybe the next morning you're like, okay, I got to, but it's not this like, okay, and then I don't talk to you the rest of the day kind of deal. Because it's like, this thing comes up, so.
Yeah, we're relationally. That's what Jesus wants with us. Not just
Right.
constant conversation. I think he loves that. Oh, he does. It's like, please invite me into it. I'll be glad to show you where we're going to do this or how we're going to go with this. And one thing you talked about, which I really love with your possibility down in Nashville, is actually that's the first time I met you. And I'm
Oh, yeah.
encouraging our listeners on this, is you brought that to us for prayer. I mean,
Yeah,
you
that's
said
right.
you didn't tell us a whole lot about it, but you're like, you know what? I'm really trying to hear from the Lord on that. And then
we
we've
were functioning as a prayer team at the end of a service.
yeah, you and I happen to be on prayer team up front, and David came up to us, and so I just want to encourage that. It's like so much we can be so blessed within community. We're asking others,
Yeah.
"Would you help me hear the Lord?" And then you did that. Obviously, you took your buddy down with you. You said, and to really get into the space and okay, what are you doing here, Lord? And we've heard numerous stories like that where something looks just. We've even talked about it here many times where just something looks so amazing. You're like, "Oh, this is going to be great." And there's like, there's no, you know, and then you kind of look back on it and you're like,
yeah.
oh, thank you, God.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you. You
I
didn't
mean,
let
there's
me do that.
definitely the truth to that. Like, if it's too good to be true, it's usually too good to be
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
And I would, I mean, I just want to, in full disclosure, okay,
Yeah.
I was like, and I don't know if you guys ever feel this way, but like, literally, I love this about trying to follow the Lord. Like, it literally takes me back to being like 5 again. Right. But I really want to. Right. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I mean, my buddy was like, no, dude, we shouldn't do it. And on the drive back, and if he were here right now, and if he's listening to this, he's laughing because he knows. Like, there were 5 times, like, well, I don't know, dude, but maybe, but I don't know, but like, because like my flesh is just like, and you know, it's, you know, it's a, you know, but that, you know, but it's awesome. And again, like, it was such a, in like, everything seemed like it lined up, like everything except for I felt that conviction, and I was just like, and man, I wanted to hide it and pretend like it wasn't there. Um, and so yeah, you just, and I feel like now I'm just older where I you know, kind of that Ricky Gervais model, you know, where it's just like I just don't care anymore. Like I mean, like you know, people are gonna be, you know, whatever. It's just more important to just be obedient to that, you know. And it's like when that voice is like, no, when he's like, nope, don't touch that. No matter how good that sounds, do not touch that. And you know, and I will say this. I guess this is my encouragement to people. Anybody who's just kind of like, it's way more exciting this way, right? Like it's like, you know, it's because you want to get it in like this very neat little da 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 da. You know, those planners out there. I always make fun of my guys on my team, the planners, and you need planners. Don't get me wrong, but it's like when you try to get. I don't know how you do a 3-year plan. I mean, it's just. Unless he says like, and there are, you know, when you're doing a restaurant, it's a 12 to 18 month process. So, I mean, there is some, you know, we have to be able to do this, but you're still just waiting until it's like, okay, I think now, you know, and I think having more, and there's plenty of work to be done in the waiting, right? I mean, it's not like you just sit on your, you know, like you're eating chips and playing video games until you get the call, like, oh, okay, great, now we're doing this, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I just want to encourage you because a couple of things stick out about this. I know you just say it casually. I'm praying and then I'm waiting. I know you say that casually, but for your personality type and for your team, that's a really big deal.
That's hard.
It's a really big deal to have a team, especially if you got some high aggressive, intentional guys going, come on, chef, what are we doing? Boss, what are we doing? So I just want to encourage you. I mean, that's countercultural in and of itself, but it's interesting. Your entire team is watching you do this, and it sounds like you're kind of bringing them into the process. Maybe not all of it, but they're at least starting to pick up. Oh, okay, so boss is. I don't even know if I believe in God or not, but boss is like trying to listen.
Yeah,
he's trying to follow this God that he follows. And I just want to encourage you, dude. How awesome of a mentoring, modeling for your team, and also this younger guy that you said is like really like wants to learn and get mentored. This is such a big deal. Imagine the ripple effects of your team and those who are learning from you, who begin to learn. Oh, remember when the boss, remember when he waited? You know, and they start to pick up on this stuff. This is what's so beautiful about the Lord and the way he uses us, is that he will do things in us that we don't even realize the ripple effects for our team, for those around us, for the next chefs that are coming behind you who are like, man, that David guy, man, I watched him. I watched Chef. I think I want to follow him in that. So I just want to encourage you.
I appreciate
like the Lord really, really, really loves that about you. That you're willing
Thanks.
to model that for your team and for those that are coming behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's for me, I appreciate that. I'm really bad at any kind of words of affirmation, but
Not his love
I own
language.
that.
Make a note of that.
But I will say this: I don't spend a lot of time. It's actually freeing for me just to not think too much about the implications down the road, and it's just
Right.
like this thing right now, and then you just kind of like it's like the little. But then you do turn around. Like, I mean, somebody said this to me, and I'm not. I even bringing it up kind of makes me a little sick to my stomach. But I've had people say, and I will say, it's maybe the only compliment that I'll hear maybe in the restaurants that it actually breaks through whatever that thing is. And I'm not saying it's a healthy thing, but I just like I don't celebrate. Like if we accomplish something, I'm the type like cool, whatever. Now on to the next challenge,
Right.
But the probably the one compliment that gets my like I will stop and be like, and it does kind of impact me is when people thank me for the impact that I've had on the city, or man, think if you didn't, there's a guy I know who's actually become one of my best friends, but this is before I knew him. He's like, man, we decided to move to Cincinnati because of eating at Soto.
Wow.
Because it was like his wife was like from LA and was like, I'm not moving to Cincinnati. And then she had a Soto and she's like, yeah, I can move here now. I mean, look, God's honest story. And so, and people bringing up, the amazing work that a lot of people that have worked with me have gone on to do in the city and just feeling like you're a part of that that does feel good. I mean that absolutely is the one time where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But then it's quickly like, okay, time to get back to work. Like, we got stuff to do, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's cool. Actually, I was going to say we're really super blessed. I'm glad you're from Cincinnati originally, because as I was kind of just studying up on our morning here together, I was just kind of reading through stuff, and man, I mean, we're like the awesome city here with these great world-class restaurants. I mean, from magazines outside of Cincinnati and talking about your restaurants, and I think that's pretty cool, man. We feel really blessed. We joke about Cincinnati because, like, if you're not from here, it's like you've never heard, you don't even know where it's at.
Yeah.
And then somehow God calls you into it. It's like, dude, we are so blessed and
I think
so
Joe
lucky,
Burrow's
man.
helping us out, though.
Yeah.
He's
people
helping now,
are starting to, they're like, I was in France.
That's funny, man.
Side story. I was
That's
in
funny.
France eating at a Michelin 3-star restaurant, and the chef came out, and it was a father-son duo, and the father's kind of passing it on to the son, who's like, I'm probably late 20s, early 30s, and he came out to our table, and he started speaking English. He's like, Joe Burrow. And I'm like,
awesome.
what, dude? And he's like, I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I know.
That's funny.
He's like, I was like, how long you been following the Chiefs? He's like, like last 3 years. I'm like, boy, you picked a great time.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Hey, them
I like
restaurants
them,
ain't in
but-
Kansas City. They're in Cincinnati. Come on now.
Yeah.
So you said I wanted to ask about something because us being pastors on pastor salary, we're not eating at the Masonettes of the world too much. But it's funny because it was one of my first year here. A buddy of mine, a couple here in Cincinnati. They actually have a lot of property here. Do you know Scott and Maria Crawford? Do you know that name? I think he actually started a restaurant called maybe like Vine or something like that. But anyway, they have a lot of commercial property and Airbnbs here. But anyway, he was doing a nice staff thing for our Vineyard Church staff over there in Milford, and he took us out to the Masonette. And that was amazing, and help us understand a little bit more about like these ratings and how that's because like wasn't Masonette like one of the like, consistently? And you said you worked there.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because you said we're blessed to be in Cincinnati with this many restaurants, and what people don't know, and I'm from Cincinnati, and I'm also a student of kind of like culinary history, and so in the 70s, the 60s and 70s. So let me back up. So it used to be in the U.S. you had mobile 5 stars. Okay, the mobile guide would give 5 stars, and that was the ultimate in the U.S. And then Europe's counterpart was Michelin, 3 stars.
A lot of people have heard of that. Yeah.
So Michelin and mobile.
Okay.
Well, in the 60s and 70s, Cincinnati had 3 5-star restaurants in Cincinnati.
Wow.
It had more 5-star restaurants per capita than any city in the country. It was known as an Epicurean destination.
Wow.
The restaurants were the Masonette, which is where Boca is now, where I worked, Pagal's, and the Gourmet Room. Those were the three. And so much so that many years later, I think Mobile went away early 2000s, and then Michelin has kind of taken over.
Got it.
But I was at Gordon Ramsay's 3-star restaurant in London, 15 years ago, and we were working on putting Boca down at the Masonette. And so but I didn't even get that far. Maitre d' comes up, this French guy, and he's like, oh, I think I said, like, je suis cuisinier, I'm a cook. And he's like, oh, where are you a cook? And I said, Cincinnati. He goes, La Masonette. So in London, they knew the Masonette in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
And so, so that's, and now it's Michelin. I personally, cause I'm an old grumpy old man, like they're now, I literally, and I do feel kind of a calling and a responsibility here, that like fine dining is going away. Like the younger generations want, and it's to me, like I think it's like I feel I kind of said this. I'm like, if I'll be damned if fine dining is going to die on my watch. Right now, we have to rethink how we're doing it. So this cadenza that we do, like that's why. And what I like about it is that I feel for my friends. I love the symphony. I love opera. But it's harder for them to get the younger generations involved. Like it's just harder. It is. And I can say this on the podcast, because it's funny. My buddy, who's one of my biggest mentors, and he's also one of my best friends, worked at Procter and Gamble, and he's given lots of marketing advice. And he tells my team all the time, he can be a little provocative too, but it's true. He's like, hey, look, he's talking about marketing. Like, you got to do this, like one of the big things. And this is one of the things I'm weighing. Like real time is like, they're like, you need to do more social media. Like you need a videographer that just films you during your day. And I understand the impact that could have, but I really have to wrestle with that. And I kind of, depending on the minute, the hour of the day, I kind of go back and forth. But anyway, he's one of the ones encouraging me, like, dude, you need to be like, put a camera in your face, blah, blah, blah. Hi, camera. Anyway, he says,
Well, at least for today, you're giving into it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm fine with the camera. Well, that's the weird thing is like, put a camera in front of me. I'm like, but anyway, I have no idea where I was going with that. I got talking about camera. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So he's sitting here, he's talking about like, marketing or whatever. And he goes, look, dude, let me tell you something. You guys have all the content in the world you need. You don't need to create content. Like people just want to go behind the scenes. They want to see what you do. He's like, look, it's not like it's not like you have to sell tampons or something, which was like funny because he's at Procter & Gamble. He's like, hey, think about those marketing meetings. Like, how do we make a tampon interesting? Right? You know what I mean? Like, you don't have that problem. You're in restaurants. It's cool. Right. So he always says that. So I do think that we have an opportunity. It's actually something we're starting right now. It's super in its infancy, but I'm starting this thing. The working title is the Society Les Secrets, which means the secret society, and I'm creating a society of 20 to 30, young 30-somethings, where I'm getting them together, and they got to kind of sign up, but then I give them access that their parents would kill to have, because I want to start developing the next generation. So I'm giving them access to these meals at like a third of the price, because I just want to. I'm not going to lose money on it, but I'm like, hey, I want to get some people, and I want you to taste it. Cool. My point in all that is, when you take the younger generation, they get to experience fine dining. They're like, dude, probably how you felt, like,
incredible.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that, like, and again, nothing against the opera and the symphony. I love the opera and the symphony, but if you take a young person to it, they're just going to be like, maybe they're going to be like, okay, but they could just be like, all right, I kind of feel like I just went to church, right? Catholic church, right? Yeah. But so to me, that's where I kind of feel like but you do have to rethink it. And so, I love fine dining. I do. And that's like a weird thing, right? Like that's another thing that I'm like praying. I'm like, Lord, this is super crazy. Like you give me a passion. My wife calls me Lux. All my friends call me Lux. They know I'm Lux. I'm like, now I'm also hillbilly too. I like Miller Lite and filet of fish.
Right.
So what is Cincinnati doing in terms of the 3 stars right now?
Michelin is not. So Michelin will only they pick what cities they're in.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not a huge fan of Michelin.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. It'd be dope if we got a Michelin star or whatever if they come to Cincinnati. And we're certainly. So the irony is, let me put it this way. I'm a huge fan of what Michelin used to be, and I understand what they're doing. Like they gave, so there's 1 star, 2 stars, and 3 stars. And so the old days, you'd start off as a young chef, and you'd like want to get your star. And once you got 1, then you wanted to get to 2, and then and only the top got the 3.
Right.
And you could really tell the difference when you went to a 3-star restaurant, and it was when Michelin was predominantly just in Europe. Right, that's when it really. I feel like it was at its greatest. Now they're expanding, and for it's all marketing, right? And so they gave like a taqueria a Michelin 1 star, and those of us old school guys are just like, come on, dude. Like it can be an awesome taqueria, but it's just a taqueria,
Right.
and it's like that's where they like kind of taken it too far. Now that being said, I still we're working on it. One of the projects we're working on is like pushing the envelope on fine dining, and I use the muse of like, I for me, I always say Michelin 2 stars because, but again, and my younger team are like, what are you talking about? Like this cadenza we're about to execute is the closest I think we've gotten to executing 3 stars, right? Well, I would say it's definitely 2 stars. Definitely 2 stars. I would put it up against any Michelin 2 star in the world. 3 stars to me because I still have such a high. My standard is actually higher than Michelin.
Right.
100%. I have no problem saying that now. Because I've gone to some of the greats and I'm like, no, dude. It's almost like if you watered down what like the greatest, quarterback is. It's like, no, bro. I watched Tom Brady. Like that dude. Whatever you may hate him, but that dude was a badass. You know what I mean? And so to me. But like executing on that, I still use that standard with my team where I'm like, no, it's like Michelin 2 stars. Like that's what we're going to go for. And I love it. And,
really cool.
and the thing that gives me hope is that, like I said, when you turn people on, you give them access in to experience it. They're like, the legitimately, and that's like our whole ethos is BPA, blowing people away. Like we want to blow
like
people
that.
away.
Oh,
It
that's
took
good.
me
BPA.
It took
BPA,
me
I
an
like
hour
that.
and
That's
34
really good.
minutes to
That's
talk about
really
ethos.
well.
Sorry, but
BPA, I love that.
that's it. It was just, and it was self-preservation back in the day, but totally feels like it's, obviously from the Lord, like blowing people away, right? Like do everything in our power to blow people away. And I feel like even that, like that feels that like I can lay my head down at night on the pillow feeling like, mission accomplished if we did everything in our power to blow the guest away, or we blew somebody away that day. That feels good. And that, by the way, that is something that I'm always trying to find these things that resonate with my team who are secular, who I don't know where they are on faith, but like you give them the experience and the opportunity to do something that is kingdom based and that is like, so like our ethos of blowing guests away. And we go, we think way outside the box on this stuff. It's so much fun. We had a woman who just got over cancer treatments, and the server ran out, and there was Segway tours, and they weren't from Cincinnati. Went and got us during shift. Went out and got Segway tours and said, "Would you give these 2 women a ride around the city?" And so did that. And while they were riding around the city, found out what hotel they were at, and we went to the hotel and we said, "We want to load their hotel room up with like all this stuff," is blah, 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 and we did, and they were like blown away, it's like, so that's our thing is like, like
It's
what
really
does it
good.
take to blow the guest away? Like, blah, blah, but tell me that's not,
Totally.
rooted in the Lord, and I think that's, I like, I do enjoy like anything that pushes the understanding of who like Jesus is and like God's heart, right? Because I think again, I just see it in my own staff. They see him, or it's been portrayed to him as this very judgmental, you're gonna burn, as opposed to this, this dad who loves his kids and just loves you. You know what I mean? And
Extravagantly gracious.
extravagant. And the greatest example I get to see of this is like having children. Right. I remember asking, we were talking about prayer and answered prayer, like the Lord instantly. I always know because it's like, I know exactly where I was. Right. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know where I was, but that's like, I was pulling up to our old condo, and I remember like, and we're all married, so I'm sure you can relate to this. Right. And it's like, why? And I remember asking God, I was like, why is it that I have like unconditional love for my children? Right, like I don't ever have to choose to love my children. Like I just love them.
Yeah.
And let's be real, sometimes I have to choose to love my wife. Okay, like I mean, as I always say, I tell my wife, like, I always love you. I won't always like you, but I always love you. You know.
I love it.
But
It's like saying back at you.
yeah, 100%. Trust me. I mean that
Right.
both ways. Trust me. I am. And I remember it was like pretty instantaneous, and it was just like I give you the love for your children, so that you know my love as a father for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I give you love of spouse so that you can know Jesus' love for you, of laying his life down for you and dying for you. Because, right? I mean, in marriage, like you're constantly like laying your life down. You're like, oh. So every time I'm like, I want to get mad at my wife, I'm like, oh, okay. Like it's a very it's a very tempering, but it's like, oh yeah, no, like, yeah. And so it has made me, I've given way, it's allowed me to give way more grace to it's been amazing for my marriage, because it's just like, oh yeah, because I'm a fixer. I'm like, I see the problem. It's like there's times in your life where you're 100% right and you're 100% wrong.
Right.
Right. Like you see the problem, you are right, but you try to fix it. Like especially when I try to operate like a chef, and I'm like, okay, so here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And honey, you did not say yes, chef. So can we work on that?
I bet she loves that.
Oh, early on in my marriage. Oh yeah, it was not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Hello, that's funny. Well, I remember, now I've not been to Boca yet, but I remember that experience that Julie and I had, because I love how we're talking about, it is so much the kingdom, because when we went to the Masonette, the food was so amazing, and I joke about it, but Julie will tell you this is true. For 2 weeks, it was depressing to eat. You know exactly what I'm saying, right? You pick it and you're like, oh, that's, it's
Well,
so,
and that's
I mean,
like
it was so amazing.
Well, and that's the thing, is that it's I love introducing people to that, but it does kind of like it does, at least it bends my interpretation of of who God is and what and how he designed everything, that like we could just breathe in calories if we wanted to.
Right.
Like,
That's
the two
exactly
things-
right.
I mean, this is
exactly
oh,
right.
you're getting real. You're getting unfiltered. Chef Falk here. Two things I think about
Unfiltered chef,
often
right
are
here.
like, hey, we could have or we just didn't need calories.
Yeah.
Right. Like we
We
didn't
don't need
to
nutrients.
eat.
We don't.
We don't need that. We didn't need to taste things and so like he said, hey, no, you're gonna taste that. You're gonna have a meal. That I always think about that and blows my mind. And then the one that I always like to bring up to my kids, especially, is like, God could have created any way for air to leave the body, but he created farting. Like that's just, I mean, honestly, like you can't admit that, you can't say he didn't. Right? He 100%. He created farting. So I just want to say that's, and I'm convinced at some point Jesus ripped one and everybody started laughing. Right? I mean, have you ever every culture?
Right.
In every culture, just saying. These are
really
random thoughts
funny.
by David Falk.
That's really funny.
No, think about it. Like
Of
in
course.
every culture, a baby
funny.
will just laugh when they hear
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And it's just like it's just like that's
yeah.
funny, right?
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen the skit
So
of the
funny.
guy that has like a fart machine or whatever, and he walks in front of people and he lifts up a leg and it's like
Oh.
that.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody behind him are laughing. I mean,
Oh,
just the reactions are hilarious. It's
Yeah.
like, so I guess my point in all that is God has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
That's my point in that is
Right.
he had like, everybody pictures him as like super serious. Everything's so serious. It's like, no. He actually loves food. He's got a sense of humor. He's funny.
That's right.
He is serious. There's a lot of, but we tend to focus on just the super serious things. It's like, I mean, my kids, they think I'm a goofball.
Yeah, we do not take things too serious here. Jamie's got, a thing with that. But man, this is so good. This has really been fun.
Yeah,
This
man.
has really been fun.
Ending on
I
farts.
love it.
There we go.
I love it.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
There
Well,
we go.
well, it
So
makes sense if
bad.
you're eating some really good food. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is, Paul-
Brussels sprouts or
Paul
something.
mentioned it earlier about like, thinking about eternity. It's not a only spiritual place where we're just up in the clouds floating around, but actually it's a new heaven and a new earth with physical bodies, with eating.
Yeah.
And it's like your mind my mind starts to just shut down. Like when I start to try to imagine, what is that wine going to taste like?
Well, it's funny you said that because I do think that like, when you get dishes that it's a glimpse of what's to come. It's a glimpse. And so, and it's, I love that you say mind shut down, because my mind never shuts down, except when I taste something that, and I know it just scratches the surface of what's to come, but my team will know. And I remember the first time I did it, I was at Union Square Cafe, 94, 95, on my way to culinary school. I had my mom and my aunt. We were driving up, and they had squab on the menu, and I didn't know what it was. It was a special that day.
I don't know what it is.
I'll get there. And so I was like, and I was too nervous to ask, but I wanted to try it. So I ordered it, and it was squab with chanterelle mushrooms and corn. And my mom and my aunt, two Italians talking like this, and I took a bite, and literally my mind just like, I was like, times, and they were talking, and I was like, shh, and I shushed my mom and my aunt. I was like, shh, like that, just like that. And I was like, something is happening right now. And it's just like, it did just, now you're probably wondering what squab is. Yeah. So the next day, we're at culinary school, and I go to the French restaurant, the Escoffier room at the time. It's been changed now, but the Escoffier room, and the maitre d' was French. And at this point, I had this dish that blew my mind. And all day, I'm like, what is squab?
Right.
Squab, right? So they had it on the menu at the Escoffier room. And so the French guy said, I got to ask, what is squab? And he goes, it's pigeon. Pigeon. It's my favorite meat. My favorite meet. Oh, I love it.
Pigeon?
Pigeon. It's so good. So good. Now, this ain't like, Fountain Square pigeon, okay? I mean, I don't know. I probably but it is. All
right.
Oh, le pigeon is so good. Yeah. But I remember, so now I have those, and like if I'm having, now it's usually food wine pairings where I'm like, I shut the conversation down. I'm just, did everybody stop talking? Just like, you know what I mean? Like if you're hearing a beautiful piece of music, right? You're just like,
absolutely.
You don't want it, it's just like,
Right. Well, you can imagine this new heaven and new earth. We have new bodies, so our taste and smells even. But we both still have COVID, like smell issues, and
I was so blessed.
They'll be perfect. Yeah, you were. That's perfect. The food will be incredible. I mean, the wine will be the wine that Jesus served and better. I mean, this is so exciting, man.
I'm not gonna lie.
Because if he did that in this already, but not yet.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. It's amazing here. Oh my gosh! In a new heaven, new earth.
More pigeons. There's gonna be a lot of pigeons taking it in eternity. I think. A lot of squab.
A lot of squab.
I think they're already pretty heavenly. Perfectly prepared.
That is so funny, man. We learn something new here every single day, man. Every day.
David, thank you so much.
Yeah, no.
This was such a fun convo. Just talking to you. I wonder. Just one last provocative question.
Sure.
One last provocative question. What's the hardest thing about being a chef and a believer at the same time?
I'm going to say specific to, well, I would say chef and restaurateur. I think it's navigating what I know, like working with world-class chefs, right? Like knowing the intensity that you have to get greatness, but then balancing that with the fruits of the Spirit, right? That's a very, like when you read the fruits of the Spirit, they don't necessarily, and I think you got it, you know what I mean? Like
Dave Ramsey. He showed
but I mean like patience, kindness, goodness, or versus like, let your gentleness be evident to all. You're like, so that's wow. And I will say, like my guys, jokingly call me Chef Light. Like I've definitely calmed down, and so there's and I will say, and it's a process, right? So I'm definitely, I think that you can be extremely intense, have an extremely high standard, and be gentle and patient, and I don't always succeed, but I would say that's the thing. I think that's the hardest thing. That and kind of like we talked about earlier, juggling the desire to be world class and honoring God at the same time, and honoring other people. And I don't always do it. I fall short. I will kind of fall back into my old ways where, whatever that is, if I, am short with somebody, light somebody up. Now, sometimes, I don't even, I tend to not, I will say one difference is I don't light people up, right? I'll light the situation up.
Yeah.
Right. Like they will, cause and I do think about that too, right? Like, Lord, you made me, I'm a passionate, fiery guy. Right. And, I always you read these things like, oh, well, true wisdom is when you can be quiet and say a few words. I'm like, well, I'm screwed then. Like, whatever, and it's like, but I will say, like, because, and I think it's important that I'm definitely would be the most, I think, like Peter, if I were like any of the
Right.
disciples. But again, like, God created
Yep.
people like me and Peter and,
absolutely.
whatever. And so, I think it's now, instead of like, hey, Bob, I'm mad at you because of X.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just going to be really mad about X. And I'm
Right.
going to tell you why I'm mad about X and why
Right.
we can't do X. And you will feel the same passion
Right.
as if I were talking about Bob,
Mhm.
but it's actually X.
Yeah.
And it's true, because I am passionately opposed to X and we cannot do X. But it's that whole adage of like, be hard on, the system's not the person or whatever. And so I try to get better at that of like, I'm going to be really angry about this thing here, but I want them to feel my passion,
Yeah.
to feel the importance of this is like da-da-da, because it's also a way I gauge on whether or not we have the right people.
Yeah.
And let me be clear, I don't think that everybody, and quite frankly, I know everybody should not work in restaurants like mine.
For sure.
100% are not called. Like, there
Right.
are people who are like, yeah, I want to get after that. Just like 100% of people probably couldn't, even if they wanted to, but even if they wanted to, shouldn't play in the NFL.
Right.
There's a
Mhm.
great,
Mhm.
Saban line that, A players don't want to play with B players and B players don't want to play with A players.
Right.
And I don't think that like A players are going to heaven and B players are going to hell. Right. You know what I
Right.
mean? I think it's just like, hey, not everybody.
Yep.
Like, one of the things that I don't project onto my kids at all is that I want them to be in the restaurant business. I actually hope that they aren't. I kind of say that. I don't really have, to me, that's totally in God's hands. Like,
Yep.
whatever I just want to be obedient. No different with them, right? Than my business is like, okay, well, if little Frankie wants to be an art teacher, great.
Right.
Awesome. I'm going to like champion that all day long. I'm going to be a little more petrified if they even want to go in the restaurant business. I'm not going to lie. But I think that's, to your question, that's the hardest, because the fallback is I'm going to be, you're really nice. And I made that mistake. I've fundamentally made that mistake where I'm like, oh, I'm going to be like more grace giving and
Right.
more blah, 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 and I get flabby.
Mm.
And then the restaurants are flabby, and then you lose money. And, it's like,
Mm.
ooh, there's only one, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
I always talk about the NFL or like military, right? I mean, like, think about that. Like, you're called to literally kill other people if you're in the
Right.
military.
Right.
So there's just a seriousness to what I feel called to do and everything else. And it's trying to weed that, but then also do it in a way that is, and it's very, very hard to be both world class and God honoring at the same time.
Well,
Mhm.
I know you need to like ask the Lord and he's going to tell you, but I think this social media, like just hearing you talk this entire time, I think it would be brilliant to have a camera following and watching like what you did with the Bob and passion about this. I was like, I think a lot of people would watch a lot of that.
I know. You know what I feel like? Okay, so real time here. Okay,
Yeah, that's the Chef Falk Show.
real
Being
time.
introduced here on.
No, it is. But it's one of those things that, like, I told you, right? I feel like with him, it's always graduating. You're like graduating up.
Yeah.
And you're like, but third grade feels pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, like I don't know what grade I'm in, but I'm gonna say third grade.
But you don't want to bury your talent in the ground.
No, I know.
You want to multiply.
I know. It's like, so but it is that like, oh,
Yeah.
like that, and I will say this, okay, so that's the hardest thing about being a chef, but the hardest thing, and I already said, like, so I would say I always like threes. I don't like even numbers. So like, right, I already said, like, it's hard enough to just have a restaurant that makes money. And it's hard enough to just have a restaurant that has
Right.
world-class food. Like,
Right.
that's hard. Doing both is hard. You know what's the hardest of all? Is the trifecta, is also having a world-class family and being an amazing husband and father. And I'm not saying that to be like, that is hard.
Yep.
That is that, but I love it. I do love that challenge, but it is a, and so I think that's where I've heard enough people say, like, oh, dude, you should do this, like, whatever. But it's just like, I want to make sure, because let's face it, I mean, we all know in any look, pastors.
Yep.
It doesn't matter, right? Music for sure, but even pastors, right? People that go after fame or whatever, like, it rarely ever equates to
Right.
being healthy. So I think it's just, so
True that.
if nothing else, I would say that the fear and trepidation I have is healthy. And I wanna. It's actually perfect, and maybe I don't know if we gotta shut this down, but maybe end on this is like as great as it sounds like it is absolutely something that I really need to sit with it. Like I want to feel like he's saying do this
Yep.
because
Mhm.
well you got to understand this is the messed up thing in all this, and I don't know if this is where it plays out, but my when I was younger and I either didn't know the Lord or didn't care, or before I knew him, right? My entire I didn't bring this up in my journey. I wanted to be the most famous chef.
Mhm.
I wanted to be the greatest chef. Like I wanted to be all the,
Mhm.
all the evil things and all the unhealthy fleshly desires, right? That's what I wanted. And then he took me in the desert and I was like, great, now I don't want that. And so sometimes I'm wondering, like, and so one, it's like, is he like now going to bring you back and like, oh, or whatever. But even that I don't like saying because it's like, oh, well, see, that's what
Right.
it is. He's going to like,
Mhm.
I brought up
I
the
get that.
parable of like burying the talents and to a guy we both know. And he goes, look, man, he goes, I think that's applicable for some people. I don't think you fall into that category. He goes, and it was interesting. He goes, I think guys like you, it's more applicable. The story of Mary and Martha, right? Guys like you need to sit at the feet of Jesus, and like and so, but I do like being on camera or doing this is very easy for me, and there is a part of me, gosh, if this were more my job, this is great because I do love talking about things I'm passionate about. But again, that's also one that and also like my oldest daughter is starting. Not that I'm famous, but in Cincinnati, I'm like whatever,
Right.
like quasi whatever,
Right.
and like she's starting to pick up on it. I'm like, ooh, and you would think like, you're like, ooh,
Right.
you're like, and so just making sure, any of those things, I don't want to jump into without really thinking it through. But I would say where I'm at now, I was like, absolutely no. Now I was at 50-50 before I came in here, but now I hear that I'm going to go 60-40, but I think the thing to me that I said to my team was, as long as I felt like it was authentic, like it was just me.
That's good.
And if it's just it may be just one of those things that if I get close enough, because I don't, sometimes I feel like he's like, do this. And you're like, okay, we're doing that. But sometimes it's like, okay, I feel like we're supposed to go this direction on faith. And I feel like I'm getting into one of those like faith ones where it's not like definitive. It's like on faith, I'm going to move in this direction. And then but feel confident like, oh, if this is leading to like, if there's unhealthy fruit that's coming from this, like, yep, cut that down. And I will have zero problem.
Right.
But if I'm honest, it feels more like one of those challenges where it's like, okay, I want you to go over there. I'm like, but I don't, which is kind of a beautiful story in and of itself, because like now even that I don't feel comfortable saying, because I don't want to imply that that's what he's saying, but like it is I do enjoy at least the fact that my posture now is like, like it scares me more than like, oh yeah, let's
Dude, this has been so fun.
Yep.
Here's what I'm thinking. Raz, you tell me what you think. I think we ought to pray over David.
That'd be great.
Just pray over our brother.
Well, last time you guys did it worked, so I'm ready for a tune-up.
let me pray over you, and then we will bless our listeners as well. Father, I thank you for David. I thank you for our brother. I thank you for how uniquely and wonderfully you've made him to smell and to taste and to see what is good that you've created and that what you've inspired him to create. Thank you for his drive. Thank you for his yieldedness to you. I thank you that he images you and your love for eating with all kinds of people that have it together and people that don't have it together. And I ask for an increase of your spirit, the spirit of welcome to the outcast, of welcome to the stranger, of welcome to the one who thought that you, Jesus, did not like them, but that everyone that David comes into contact with would experience the love of Christ. They would experience welcome. We thank you for our brother and for all the decisions that are coming up, the wisdom that he needs for expansion or adjustment or all of these things. I bless my brother with wisdom from you, that he would know exactly what he needs to do. And So we thank you for him, and we bless his family. We bless everything that he's putting his hand to, that he would experience your delight. And Jesus, I just want to say thank you. We look forward to the day where we feast with you in flesh. I thank you for pigeons and squab. Thank you for the finest of wine. I thank you for the celebration of being with brothers and sisters who have no business being at your table, only that you have died for us, you were raised for us, and you have drawn us to yourself by grace through faith. So we thank you. Thank you for my brother. Thank you for these listeners. And we bless you and we bless them. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So today we've been talking to the world-class chef, David Falk, keeping Cincinnati on the restaurant map, which we're excited about. But you don't need to come here from California or New York. Just stay where you are. No, we love having you today, man. It's been so fun. We appreciate you, and it sounds like I feel like there's almost some announcements here, like the David Falk show. I don't know.
Watch out.
We're playing. All right, well, hey, thank you guys for listening in. I'm Raz, my co-host, Dr. J, and again, we've been with David Falk. We appreciate you so much. Thanks. All right.
Great being here.
Bye, guys.